Thank you very much, and lovely to see so many of you here today. This is the first event on this year's Crime Festival. I'm Angela Wren, and I write the Jacques Foray mystery stories, which are all set in the Sibson in South Central France. I also write short stories with a number of other authors, and we have 2 sets of anthologies already out, and a 3rd set about to arrive in the next month or so. This panel, we are looking at creating a villain. So there will be discussion amongst the members of the panel. There won't be a standard question time at the end because I plan to run this a little bit like Fiona Bruce and Question Time. Yes, I know I don't look anything like Fiona Bruce and I don't sound like her anyway, but that's fine because I want to put my own stamp on it. So feel free, if you have a question, just raise your hand at any particular point and we will take that question from you. And be aware that although you're sitting comfortably, you might even be asked a question yourselves, okay? Well, we did say audience participation, so there you go. And, okay, I'd like to introduce the panel to you. And on my right, we have Gianetta Murray, who grew up near San Francisco, and she describes herself as a writer, dreamer, and cat owner. While reading Austen and Dickens for her various degrees, she also binged on Golden Age crime novels. Having worked in the Silicon Valley in various roles, she eventually married a Yorkshireman and has lived here for 20 plus years. Her anthology, A Supernatural Shindig, was published last year, and the 2nd book in her Vivian Brandt cozy crime series, Dug to Death, is due out in weeks. Next to Gianetta, we have Tom Sibson. He's a Yorkshireman and spent his early working years in various roles in research and engineering. As a writer, he shares his love of the city of York with readers, albeit through dark, intriguing and mind-teasing scenarios. When not writing crime, he's researching true crime, modern history, or running. He plays the guitar, is a rock music fan, and he likes solving cryptic crosswords, the one in Private Eye being a favourite. Next to Tom, we have Dawn Treacher. Dawn is an author, illustrator and artist who has made her name writing children's fantasy adventure fiction, which also have mysteries to be solved. Dawn, who loves to read a good mystery, has now finally turned to the other side of the law and is busily working her way through a full series of cosy mysteries. She's added a magical realism crime story to her oeuvre and has a psychological thriller due out next year. So I'm in such seriously awesome company here. And Tom, I'd like to start with you. Thinking about characters and how you create characters. And I understand that you sometimes summarize each character by a set of about 6 to 10 bullet points. Why is that?
Yeah, it's, I don't know how to do this technique.
Sorry, you were better off without both of those on.
It's such a small group.
Okay.
It's all echoing.
Yeah.
All right. If I share a little like that, you're still hearing me, but yeah. I've generally gone through life not really having a reputation for being that quiet, so I think we're all going to be pretty safe. Yeah. Now, if you go on the internet, you go into Google and type, how do I create a character? You will be directed, if you go to the same places as I was directed, to places where you can literally download, I'm not kidding, a 20-page template to fill in for each character. And it really goes from what was their favourite school dinner? Who did they have their first kiss with behind the bike shed? What was the first colour of the first pair of socks that they had? I was crazy. And I find it better actually, and maybe it's part of my engineering background. You tend to sometimes work when you're planning an engineering or scientific project. You're often better to start on the basis that less is more. Get the fundamentals just down. So I've typically summarised each character on one page with about 6 to 10 bullet points. And the reasons for that, I actually find it's quite useful. Not only on the basis that less is more, but there may be things about your character that you don't necessarily know at the start, but what might actually come out as you go through the novel. So he might actually, go down to the, I don't know, it's just set in Harrogate, and I'm making this up as I go along. Good God, both of it makes it up as it goes along. What on earth's happening? But he might go down to the Valley Gardens, and they might get a waft of the sulphur water from that pump at the bottom. And it might trigger in him something that happened at school when people threw eggs at him or something like that. And you wouldn't have planned that before you started writing the novel, but the kind of these serendipitous things just pop up as you're going along. So it's sometimes better to start with less and let the good things pop up as we go. So, for example, for my main detective inspector who's working on the case in the first book, he's a family man. He doesn't have a tragic backstory like alcoholism or a difficult ex-wife or anything that kind of thing. He's a good person manager and a person that I myself would like to work for if I was in. He's keen. He had a happy upbringing with a father who was in the military, although he was a little kid when the Yorkshire Ripper was around, and some of that preys on his mind and haunts him sometimes. Other than that, he's dedicated to his job, and okay, off we go. Chapter 1. The sun was bright. And often.
You decided not to name him.
Everyone's got different ways of doing this as well. And you talk to 3 different crime authors, you'll probably find 4 different ways of doing it. Some people I know actually go around cemeteries, jot down names off gravestones.
I do that.
I've heard of other people that actually will open a road map and just like block the name down somewhere. So you'll have a character called Bill Spofford or Joe Weatherby or something like that, or whatever. What I tend to do, it's quite a useful one, and again, this one seems to be quite unique to me, is I'll sort of pick 2 celebrities and swap the first names and surnames around. So, for example, if I've been listening to Phil Collins and Kate Bush, then can have a Phil Bush and a Kate Collins. And it's surprising how much you can do that and actually get away with it. So, and people never spot it. The only one that, a couple that I've named differently, one of the detectives is called Karen Parkinson. She's named after my sister, who in real life actually is called Karen Parkinson. Here she is now. And the main lead detective is a guy called Gene Garland. And the reason for that is I based him on. Has anyone seen Apollo 13?
Yes.
Everyone seen Apollo? Remember the mission controller, Gene Kranz?
Yes.
One of the bullet points actually that I've got is that he's actually styled. A lot of his style is on Gene Kranz.
The
buzzcut, the waistcoat, the whole thing. Whenever I'm writing, I always personally imagine him looking like. I've got that picture of him in Apollo 13. And actually, the guy who plays him in the film actually does a pretty good job. He looks pretty much like that in real life. He's still alive, to the best of my knowledge. Like Buzz Aldrin, so in his 90s. But I call my detective Gene Garland because Kranz is German for Garland. So and that's all right. That goes, and that's how I do it.
Okay, and just picking up on that point, and this is what I meant about it being a bit more interactive. Dawn, how do you name your characters?
The names just pop out of my head. I'm a bit like that. I picture them, I can see them in my mind's eye, and I just find a name. I've always been like that. I've never had a problem finding names for characters. It's not a thing that I've stumbled on.
What about you, Gianetta?
Well, I had to rename my heroine 3 times because every time I named her something, I found somebody else with an almost identical name. She's in my writing group, so she knows, oh, she's not Amanda now, she's this. But as for villains in particular, I try to name them after something obnoxious in their character. So if they're pompous, maybe a pompous name, something, something the third is going to come out of me. So yeah, there'll be something like that.
All right. Well, I do go round cemeteries. And the reason for that is because my books are set in France. And I'm always looking at French war memorials because at least I know the names are genuine. But I also use various other different things to name my characters because some of them are English. Okay, so moving on then and getting back to these nasty, evil people that we call villains. Gianetta, I've heard you talk before about the importance of making all of your characters relatable on the page. But how on earth do you manage to do that for villains? We're supposed to hate them, aren't we? Sometimes.
Sometimes. Well, I mean, no matter how saintly we all think we are, we've probably felt one of the major motives for murder, right? Whether it's greed or jealousy or vengefulness or hopefully not psychopathy or sociopathy. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. But something like that we've always felt. As Angela said, I grew up in California. And as many people in the US, I have a MAGA and an uncle. And they know they're going to be not treated well in one of my future books. Which could be a problem because they're the only family I have to stay with now. So yeah, I try to latch on to something that I know we've all felt, reasoning that we may have had, even if we don't go to murderous, extents. Something that we've all felt and can all sort of relate to get there. Even a serial killer can be sympathetic for those of you who watch Dexter, Yeah, he can't help it. He's trying to make good out of it. Anything can be sympathetic in some way. The good thing about, murder mysteries and other kinds of books is there's an audience for everything. So you can have your Voldemorts or whatever that are purely bad. And we all go, yeah, when they get defeated as well. Different strokes for different folks.
Okay, Dawn. I've heard you mention you need to think about the public face of a villain as opposed to the private self that they keep hidden all the time. So how do you do that in your books?
Because I write cozy crime now. So in cozy crime, they're always set in very small communities. Everybody knows everybody, and the killer could be anybody. Somebody you get on the bus with, it could be somebody in the club, it could be someone that serves you, it could be in a coffee shop. They are so well integrated into that community that they are just one of many. You wouldn't be able to see it in their face. You can't see it in what they do in a public way. So they have to be incredibly well connected into that community. Which is why my red herrings, which is lots of crime, may be easier to spot than my.
And how much of that secret side of your villain do you keep it all to yourself, or do you let little bits and pieces of it out throughout the novel?
I do tend to like to lay what I call little breadcrumbs. So you will meet my villains pretty early on, and there will be tiny, tiny little crumbs, but they probably won't make any sense until you get to it. Because I like to lay a mystery and just out. I'm not going to give anything away easily, but it's all there if you look. For example, you can't fire a gun in one chapter if you haven't already revealed the gun. You have to set everything up. So there's a lot of planning in a cozy.
Right.
But it's fun.
Okay, so thinking about character then, and we've already heard that there are very different aspects to character, but nobody has particularly mentioned the physicality of characters. And I'm very much aware that in some genres of books, it's quite important that when a new character, irrespective of whether they're a villain or not, when they first walk onto the page, that there is that kind of physical description of that individual. And I'm just wondering, Gianetta, how do you feel about that? Do you do that or not, or do you drip feed everything?
It depends. If there's a situation where your protagonist is watching somebody or looking at somebody, then you have a good excuse to describe that person pretty much in depth. Otherwise, I'll just kind of slip in things as you go along. She threw back her raven locks or, whatever. You can slip stuff in there. I think for your protagonist, it's important to kind of get that picture going early, though, just so people kind of have it in their minds what they're seeing. Although, then they do the film and it doesn't look anything like, not that I have a film made yet. I've already cast it, but it hasn't been made that, I get upset when they do Jane Austen stuff and it's not like exactly like they were in the book. So.
Me too.
Yeah, but you can drip feed. Nobody likes hugely long, boring descriptions of everybody who walks onto the page in the first chapter. you kind of have to filter it out a bit.
Hmm. I mean, Tom, you've said about your key points for your characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously those key points will be about how they behave and about their internal mechanisms and how they work as people, won't they? More than anything. But what about physical descriptions? Do you actually give any physicality away about your villains or any of your characters?
My villains, no. At least not for most of the novel. I tend to write in the same style that the villains always is never announced up front, and well, I also try and leave clues and there's mysteries and hints to solve and things like that. And I try and do little red herrings and things. And there's always people who it could be and couldn't be. And I always like to, what I try and do, and from the feedback I've received, I'm generally very successful at it, is that people will start to put together, try to solve it themselves in their own mind. And this is part of what I like to do, is to invite the reader to join the detectives on the mystery solving. Now, if I've done the job correctly, then the idea is that after having gone through like literally everybody and changed their minds half a dozen times, we'll get to the last chapter and go, oh my God, it was so obvious all along. And if I've done that, I think I've done a good job. What I tend to do for physical descriptions, sometimes what I tend to do, rather than sort of write a physical description, I'll pick an actress or a character or a well-known person, and in my mind's eye, imagine it looks a little bit like them. There's a few sort of ground rules, I think, to describing characters. What I like to do is just sketch the outline of the basics of them, and then let the reader fill in the intricate detail in the mind. They really don't need that much. If you go to obviously, if there's something that's like really key, you know, you get 3/4 of the way through the book, and you're saying Bill found it difficult to climb the ladder, being only 4'8" tall, and his 3-foot grey beard kept getting caught in the neck. What was that? Funny, I had an editor for a short while who was particularly woke, and I described this woman character as having dark hair, and she went and told me off. Apparently, it was misogynistic because I was describing her through the male gaze. She got fired by the publisher about a week after all this because apparently she'd just been irritating every author that she'd ever come across. So what I generally tend to do is just find ways to describe the basics, you know, the height, the build, the age, maybe the hair or something like that, and then leave the reader to pretty well fill in the rest, and then the rest of it, you make the character how you want. The only thing that I was told to avoid is to avoid the old looking in the bathroom mirror.
Yeah.
Plot device. Provided you can do that, you're on the winner.
So, can I ask a question? But what
Yes.
do you mean that?
Oh, yeah.
Where you fill in your own life?
No, when you're describing a character, one of the old sort of like hackneyed ways of doing it, which is rather out of vogue, make out of it, you say, you know, he looked into his reflection in the bathroom mirror and saw the dark haired 45-year-old gaunt-looking man staring back at. No, you know, find other ways of doing
I think the other good thing about leaving a bit to the imagination as far as characters too is that the reader can put their own person in that. You know, they may know somebody who looks slightly like that who they don't like, and they're like, oh yeah, that's maybe
I think you really want to let the reader imagine it themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I would only ever give 1 or 2 quirky little things about a character when they can first see a character, and it's not necessarily going to be what they look like. It might just be that they've got cat hairs all over their cardigan, or some very subtle little thing which will hint at their personality. You can distinguish between the characters I've got on the page, but I'm not going to tell you they've got, you know, they're a brunette and they're wearing a skirt and a top. I mean, that is just dull in my opinion.
It's spoon-feeding to the reader as well.
Yeah. I think the reader, as a reader myself, I like to be able to picture what that character looks like. That their voice speaks to me, and I view it in my own mind. And I'd like my readers to do the same. I don't want to tell them exactly what my character looks like. As long as their personality, maybe some of their
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So, audience, this is a question for you now. So, does it annoy you when you read very detailed physical descriptions of characters or not? Hands up to those who say it does annoy them, please.
Not annoyed, but I'd rather be left to relax
Yeah.
myself.
It bores me, British.
Okay.
It depends. It depends on how well written. If it's poorly done prose, it's annoying, but if it's well written, I like it.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Question for me would be whether I could remember it and whether I'd mix up the descriptions of the different characters in, within 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
I changed the names of characters. I know you go through a lot of trouble naming, but I changed the names. I don't know why. I do.
You give all your next door neighbours nicknames, don't you?
Yes.
Yes.
So when you're reading a book, you're giving nicknames to the characters.
Mr. Wheelie Bin and Mr. Birdbath.
That's my college. I nickname people in my head. She's the girl who dresses in the 80s. She's the
You know
pink
immediately who you're talking about, then don't you? With your friends
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Your own world.
Well, it's really funny. The wife, when she goes out with her friends from college, she's going out with Sandra and Anne, and Helen, and Becky, and all these characters. When I'm going out with the mates from college, I'm going out with Bergerac, Vulture.
And in doing that, what we're actually doing is we're not just picking up on what that person might dress like or look like. We're also picking up on the individuality of that person, aren't we? When we're doing that with our neighbours, there's something about them that reminds us of that particular TV character, or something about them that makes us think of the colour brown or whatever. And I guess that's where I'd quite like the panel to go next. You've got your character, you've given them a name, and you're starting to write your story. Tom, you've got your 6 to 8 bullet points. How do you drill down into that character? How do you drill down to find out exactly what it is that makes them tick, that makes them behave in the way that they behave in the scenarios that you're putting them in?
Sometimes what I'll do, I'll pick bits of characters in real life.
Mm.
And so, for example, the detective Karen Parkinson, I just simply based her on my own sister, and that's easy, job done. If I can, Jean Garland was like Gene Kranz, how would Gene Kranz at NASA handle this? I was trying to think in those terms. And then for other characters, what I may do is sort of pick either a person that I know or a couple of people that I know and make a sort of amalgam of them. And then doing that, it then makes it easy to write because I just write as if it was. So, for example, if I've got a meeting between DC Parkinson and D.I. Garland, all I imagine is what would a meeting between my sister and Gene Kranz at NASA look like? Frankly, something that I'm sure she personally would love to happen because she's into that kind of stuff. And I just sort of imagine how that would come together, and then I just find it dead easy from that point on.
What about you, Dawn?
For me, it's all about the story. My characters will come and emerge, really. They emerge to me when I start writing. I have a picture in mind of a person or a scene. That's pretty much all I ever have when I start an entire novel. The characters become real to me, and they basically dictate what's going to happen. So I'm usually quite enlightened somewhere along the line because they'll suddenly emerge a side of them I never even thought of. It seems to flow as you start to write, and so you learn a lot about your own character when you're writing your own novel. And it's why I love being a writer.
What about you, Gianetta? Do your characters sometimes surprise you as you're writing?
The murderers do. Those of you who write know that there's plotters and there's pantsers. There's the ones who have an outline, like Angela, very organized. And then there's the pantsers where it's just like, let's see where it goes. I'm in the middle, so I do a general outline of my novels before I start. And then as I go, things inevitably change. As a matter of fact, in both the first book and the second book, the murderers didn't end up being who I thought it was exactly. So as I got to the end, I was not like, oh no, that person didn't murder, it was this person. So I have to remain open to that sort of thing. But as Dawn said, as you get to know the characters, as they have their interactions with the other characters, you learn more about them, and it becomes clear whether or not they should murder somebody or not. Or if you want to murder them. Have you ever noticed that in Midsummer, we were watching Midsummer Murders last night, which we enjoyed, and there's always in the first half hour, you are introduced to all the characters, and you're like, oh, I hope he gets killed. That's the nice thing about cozies. Usually, a lot of times, the one that gets killed is the baddie as well. So you don't have to kill
All of my cozies are set in fictional North Yorkshire, rural villages where I've always lived. There are so many characters in real life that will spark ideas for you. I mean, people are your best inspiration. They're all around you. Your characters are everywhere. Little quirks, little things that they might do. They all build a picture.
So what you're saying, Dawn, is that it's absolutely true. Talk to a writer long enough and you'll find yourself in their books.
Well, let's put it like this. There are strange incidents that happen in a lot of my cozies, which are real and they did really happen. I do know about them. But you'd never be able to know who it is or where it was. But you might think, surely it couldn't happen. Oh, well, it did.
I want to drill a bit deeper into villainous characters because, of course, if you're writing a psychological thriller, you need somebody who is either a psychopath or a sociopath, possibly, but somebody who's on the verge of one of those two illnesses because they are a kind of illness. I was just wondering, Dawn, how do you get that to come across?
The thriller that I wrote is based on a fractured mind. Based on a mind that's fractured due to something that happened as a child.
Okay.
Now you say, well, how do you know about what between you and me? The images that my protagonist had were ones that I hadn't told myself. They were disturbing. They were very, very unpleasant, and I never told anybody about them. For me, I survived, but it doesn't mean to say I'm not the person there so well. So I think you've got to find something to somewhere to start in the cycle. How is this person going to suddenly become a person that they weren't at the beginning? So completely and utterly altered that they're capable of doing something.
So backstory then for your characters is something that you find quite important.
I need to know the backstory. I don't necessarily tell you it. It doesn't necessarily all come out. Some of it will be relevant to come out. But I may well know a lot more.
What about you, Tom? How much of backstory for your characters do you create?
Again, sort of typically what could be summarised in a few sentences or bullet points. From the last novel, 5 Down, I think the overall backstory can be summarised in about 2 sentences. I can't tell you what those 2 sentences are because it will completely spoil the book. And there will be copies for sale at the end. I'll get the plug in now. I tend to have, again, sort of quite psychological stuff. And my villain typically isn't revealed right until the end. So throughout the novel, what you're actually seeing, you become aware of them through the things that they do, rather than actually seeing them as a person. To the extent that in 5 Down, they brought in one of these what they call them that characters, forensic psychologist guy to try and get to the bottom of what's going on, because it all gets a bit dark and a bit crazy. There's the psychologist called Luke Tennant. I went to school with Luke Tennant, and it's basically him. He knows absolutely bugger all about psychology. Likewise, provided she gets back from the gym or swimming in time, we might get to meet Professor Dawn Robinson, who's that's not really work. She's my other half, and it's based on her. But she's a professor of mathematics at York University. There's a real irony because I'm actually the mathematician of the family. She's rubbish. She studied medicine. So, so if anybody falls ill or needs surgery doing, she can step in and open you up and all the rest of it. Just don't ask her to do mathematics. But yeah,
Real people writing about.
Oh, on the contrary, they absolutely. You'd be surprised that I've known authors actually hold raffles to have your name mentioned in a book.
Oh yeah, they do. They do that, but it is minor characters.
Yeah,
Main characters.
Oh God, no! I tell you, the ones I've seen, I couldn't believe it. The ones that are like, sometimes they're auctioned off for charity or something like that. And funnily enough, the ones that I've seen, I could never do this personally. I've seen it. The ones that actually get the highest bids, the one that everyone goes bonkers for, is to be the name of the killer.
Yeah.
A number of people
It is.
want to be the murderer.
Telling you, wish fulfillment. That's why we all write mysteries.
If there's an option, though, typically to be the killer will go for about 3 times the price of being the detective inspector that solves it. You know.
Right, but I'm now going to bring you back to the actual question, Tom. Backstory.
Typically for each character, a couple of sentences
Okay.
is all I need. And
Right.
any more than that is adding complexity that I don't need at that stage.
Okay, and presumably of those couple of sentences, you might only reveal 1 or 2 words as the story goes.
Yeah, it gets drip fed out throughout the novel.
Okay. What about you, Gianetta? How much work do you do on backstory for your villains?
Well, since I do write cozy mysteries, and they are all set bizarrely in a small South Yorkshire village. When I first moved here, I couldn't get over the fact that everywhere I went, I'd go to the co-op, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're the American." Is there only one in the entire county? But word gets around in a small village. Everybody tends to know a lot about everybody else. Your relatives are all on the war memorials in the center square. And I worked in a small village like that when I got here. So what, in a cozy mystery like that, what's easy to do is have the villagers talking about people and learning about their backstory that way. And I will have conversations that reveal bits about different characters in the novel.
Okay, and just to complete this, I take a much wider view, and I actually create a whole backstory for all of my central characters. I don't necessarily put that in the book, but there are times when I have to know that this happened at school to Jack, and that's why he does this. Yeah, and there are some very detailed templates on the internet, as Tom mentioned, and I would suggest that if you're thinking of creating a character yourself, by all means go and have a look at them. Don't be tied by them. Whatever you do not be limited or tied by those templates and think you have to answer every question. You don't. It's a pick and mix. It's definitely meant to be a pick and mix, and I think with creating characters we do that all the time, don't we? All of us as writers.
And I think if you are writing a series, which we pretty much all are, I think, you have to keep that Bible of each character and their unique characteristics and some of their backstory, because you don't want to have her being a psychopath in one book and a saint in the next.
It's funny. I want to do the same. They've got like great big thick files and databases of what maybe I'm again unique. I actually don't do that. I just get to know my characters as people.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I've got to know them as people, like I know, my best friends, nobody keeps a dossier on the best friend, do they?
I might be a pantser, and it develops as I write, but when I discover something about my characters, I add them to my index.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing a series,
For
so
me,
I need to
it's
be
cars. I have to remember what kind of car they drive. Otherwise, I'll forget in the next novel. And some reader will go, "She was driving a blue Audi in the last one."
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you though, Dawn. We have friends that, you know, that we interact with all the time. And as writers, we interact with our characters in the same way. And our friends, that we will find out something new about them, but that newness doesn't go away. That new thing doesn't go away. It sits in our brain. It's something that we remember about them. And so our brain is our human dossier. And to follow on from what you two were saying earlier is that I actually have a database.
Oh, okay.
I have a small database in which I put all the bits and pieces that I need to remember about my characters, and it's in my brain anyway, mostly. But every so often, I will just think to myself, I must cross-check that.
For
Yeah.
those of you who don't know Angela, she spent a lot of her career as a project manager. In case you can tell that.
Can't explain the database. I'm very old school, just a lined notebook with index.
Yeah, I have a whole file.
What that will do.
And then you can get them on separate tabs. So you can have one tab that's just character, one tab for the actual plan, and
Yeah.
one tab for the writing itself.
But I'm just so old school. All my books are handwritten.
I
don't-
handwritten.
Well, that's what my typing
Well,
is like that.
Dawn, can I just point out that having had the great privilege of hearing Alan Bennett speak about writing and how he writes, I would like to point out to you that you and he are in the same mould. He has great big black filing cabinets in which he keeps out every edit that has been taken out is in there, every draft, all the details of his characters. Yeah, all the details of his characters are all in there. So I've just got the e-version of that.
From inside the
Okay,
party
you did.
cabinet.
Luckily, I have a caravan on the drive and a lot of them go.
I just made a joke about what the cats will be hiding.
Okay, so we're not exactly running out of time, but there is one thing that I do want to move on to. So, and this is yet another question for you people in the audience. We all know about villains that we absolutely love to hate, don't we? I bet you're all having names running through your heads now, aren't you? So I just want to know, can you give me some of the villains that you really love to hate? Hannibal Lecter might be one, mighty?
Yeah. Well, so by that you mean like they're a complicated character
Yeah.
that you can relate to in a positive way.
Yeah.
As well as them.
Villains you love to hate. Anybody else? Yes.
Absolutely love
I know.
George III Hamilton. King George III and Hamilton.
Ah, yeah.
That was so iconic though.
And Jonathan Groff is such a cute.
And he's really talented.
I saw him too.
Any other offers?
Talk later.
Any other offers? Villains you love to hate. Oh, Voldemort, yes. I thought he might come up. Yes, Moriarty. Great, yes. Anybody else? All right.
Carla from the John le Carré books.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. Okay, so, panel. Throughout the history of crime writing, there have been some villains that have just not left the reading or the film-going public's memory, even today. They are the kind of villain that we all absolutely love to hate. So if you could be a fictional villain, Dawn, who would you like to be and why?
I would like to be the White Witch in Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. One, she looked. Two, anybody she hated, she could turn to ice and stone. And three, she had access to all her British delights. And what was there not to love?
And yeah, and she was a great character to hate, wasn't she? Yeah. As an actor, I would love to play that role. I must admit.
I was so disappointed when I moved over here and first tasted British delight. Oh.
You have to have the right one. There are bad ones.
It has to be genuine.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't mean the cheap stuff you buy at Christmas.
Yeah, that's terrible.
That's just not worth it.
Yeah.
It's got to be real.
Yeah.
My father used to run a deli, so it was really deep.
Give it another try.
Lucky you. Tom, what about... Sorry, what was that?
Or
Oh, right.
Mason, Turkish delight. Okay. Will do.
Tom, who would you like to be?
Again, in the end, you know.
Or was he just misunderstood? Or did he have a hard time, and things, his life didn't go the way it originally was going to set out to? There's a part of it. There's a little bit of, yes, he is a villain, but wow.
In such a fantastic realm as that, though,
Yeah.
it's a bit hard to relate to them as normal human beings. They aren't.
Maybe that's why I find it easier to relate to something like that. I would find it hard to relate to a real human life, a human villain, because that bit of it, I don't think I could ever really like someone who was genuinely evil to other human beings. But take it to a science fiction realm, that makes it a whole lot easier for me. Yeah, I'll carry a torch with that.
Somebody's got to have something.
What about you, Gianetta?
I'm going to go outside crime as well, and say Mr. Wickham from Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, yes.
Now, hear me out. I think he gives short shrift. I think Jane actually quite liked him. Jane Austen quite liked him. I mean, here he is. He grows up with Darcy. He's a favorite of Darcy's father. He gets to see the rich and how they live their life and have a part of that. And then after all that, it's all go out and earn your living. We're done with you, sort of. I'd want to marry his sister too and get back into that life. I have some sympathy with him there. I mean, and in the end, let's face it, he ends up marrying someone's sister. He ends up being close to the rich people. He's never going to go starving because there are relatives of his wife that love her. He has to deal with Lydia, but he can always spend the day at his club, so that's okay. And I think Jane actually liked him because she makes him the favorite of Mr. Bennet.
Mm.
He's the favorite son-in-law of Mr. Bennet because he just loves his straightforward hypocrisy, and So I think it wouldn't be too bad to be Mr.
Okay. Right. Any questions from the audience about any aspect of creating a villain at all?
I've got one that I haven't really thought this through, but there must be different flavours of villains.
Yes.
Ones that are completely bad and ones that are slightly damaged goods or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you decide which sort of flavours?
So, well, for me, that kind of just happens. I have one particular villain in a story called Madame Bovary's Curio Shop, and she is quite definitely and absolutely not what she seems. But I've yet to put her in a full-length novel, and she will be in a full-length novel that's coming up in a new series. And she is just quite evil. Even though on the surface she appears to be a nice little old lady who has a little curio shop in the heart of France, and sells antiques and that kind of thing.
Isn't that a real name then, Madame Bovary?
I'm not spelling it that way.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm spelling it Beauvary.
She tortured her slaves and stuff like that.
Madame Bovary is a classic. Yeah, the real Madame Bovary is a classic novel, but my Madame Bovary is absolutely nothing like her. Nothing like her.
And it could be read as Bovary. So
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then I have another character who is equally evil, but he is damaged. He was damaged as a child. He went into, got in with the wrong group, got into dealing drugs and that kind of stuff. But he's also an extremely random character. So although I planned him to a certain extent in the same way that I do normally, he changed radically because he was so random. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, I mean, you tend to find all this. I have when I've read across different other crime novels. Authors tend to gravitate towards a certain type of villain. So, if you take Paul Finch, for example, I mean, he was like ex-CID dealing with gangland bosses. So his villains are all gangland bosses. They're absolutely brutal. They're the sort of people that will nail your hands to the coffee table and they'll slit your throat and not even care about it. that's the kind of, and that's a good point. And there's usually a good shoot out in the car chase and the punch up off somewhere on the line. Doing Malcolm Holland Grace, what you typically get is a very sick, twisted individual with a sort of really, really warped and perverted view of life. My sort of bills are described as sort of people on a kind of mission with a point to prove. Typically, my kind of villains, and the way that they make their point is what adds the intrigue to the thing, and that is sort of like then start to make the reader ask what is their motive for doing the thing that they're doing. Clearly, they've got a point to prove. What is the point they're trying to prove, and how will that lead us to them? So yeah, that's the kind of girl I write about.
So what about you, Dawn?
Well, when I write cozies, my characters are not necessarily evil. They are normal people whose circumstances and life experiences had turned them to do drastic things and become something maybe they don't necessarily want to be. But it's how they've turned out, which is why they're harder to spot because they're normal people.
Yeah.
So how do you cope with modern complications? People, with facial recognition, wearing mobile phones. It's quite difficult for a villain to deny that they are that.
My cozies have a very old era kind of feel. So I don't really do modern technology. Well, having said that, my green fingered flute is a YouTube star of his own gardening channel. But that's about the only technology I've put into.
What about you, Gianetta? Technology, how does that work in your stories?
Well, having worked in Silicon Valley, and actually my detective was a technical writer, so that does tend to, along with other things, does tend to play into how she solves crimes and things like that. And there are, I will mention, geolocators on the phone is, you can work it into solving the mystery pretty easily. There's also, red herrings to be had there. Were they with their phone? Yeah, their phone was there or whatever. It always amazed me in Agatha Christie so many times the red herring or the clue was the resetting of the watch or something. The watch, you can't really use that now.
And don't forget that the police aren't the only ones that can use technology. The villains can use technology as well. So, for example, in Five Down, they've got a villain that can use VPNs and Tor browsers and disposable email addresses, and they can use technological tools to try and not get caught as well. And likewise, in Control Alt Delete, there's a book about technology. If there was one. Again, there's a sort of computer facet to that, in which people are using computer technology, and as fast as the police are using the computer technology to catch them, the other people are using computer technology how to get away, or intriguingly to leave breadcrumbs for the police to uncover in the search. So it's a little bit of an internet mystery hunting. But yeah, we can all use it.
And I mean, for my detective, Jack Forey, he's a private investigator. So I don't write police procedurals, which means that Jack has no access to the stuff that the police can get. But he still has the ability to observe. He still has his second in command, Didier, who can go out on surveillance. He can go out on surveillance. They can buy technical equipment like spy cameras, which is what comes up in the book that I'm currently finishing. And, so they can make observations. So the technology is there, and it's just a question of how you, as the writer, choose to use it, or how any one of your characters chooses to use it.
And if any of you are around at 5 o'clock when we're doing How to Plot a Crime, we will be talking a lot about red herrings and ways to use things too.
Okay, we've probably got time for just one more question. Anyone? Nope.
Would you ever write a crime story outside of your own era in the past or from the future? Probably more likely from the past.
Oh, I'd love to do one in the future.
Would you?
I'm plotting a crime one in the future.
Okay, nice.
How far in the future?
Not too far, but
Well, we won't last that much longer, so.
No, well, I don't know exactly. But enough for you to know that it gives me more to play with. I will involve being on.
I'm actually currently researching a series starring Susanna Wesley, John Wesley, as the detective, because she was evidently quite a firecracker.
Okay, what about you, Tom?
It's not something I've considered. I'd probably, again, go more in the, if I wanted, if I put a gun to my head and said, you know, you have to, I'd probably be more inclined, again, to go into the future.
Would you? Okay.
And the reason being that when it comes to sort of anything beyond recent history, I'm pretty bad at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if I was to do a historical novel, I could easily pull off a novel set in, say, the 1970s or the 80s. And that's kind of like my sort of like really era that everybody loves the 70s. Who doesn't love the 70s and 80s? You know, when the marathon was called a marathon. You know,
Well, that's because we grew up.
yeah. I could probably get away with going back as far as the Second World War and murder among a Lancaster bomber crew or something like that. Might be quite funny. Anything further back than that, I'm on rather sticky ground because I'm just going to run into anachronism. You know, I'm going to people looking on their Apple watches before they were invented, or people looking at sundials after grandfather clocks had been in existence for years. People playing the phonograph when that didn't exist. Oh no, I couldn't be doing with it. So it'll have to be something that I'm personally intimately familiar with, more in the future where I can kind of bend the rules like crazy.
It is quite fun to do something historical though. My latest one, my magical realism, is about a man who's reincarnated in his ninth life as a cat and ends up in the home of the man who portrayed in World War II. It's a moral dilemma story. And so I did have to do a lot of research for World War II, concentration camps, all that. So yeah, I think it has a part to play. It wasn't the main thrust of the book, but I had to make sure it was right. So I'm not, against having to do some kind of, I wouldn't want to do a complete historical crime.
I was a librarian. I love research, man.
It would be a lot of work. You should go down a tunnel, don't you?
Oh, rabbit holes like crazy.
Go down this historical wormhole.
But I'm having a good time.
Like, I'm going to write today, and just 1 page of 2 pages, 3 pages of research later.
Yeah.
Hey, it's part of the fun.
It's all good stuff. It's all part of the fun, but yeah, it's really down a bit.
And to answer your question, my Jack Forey books are contemporaneous, basically, but the Beauregard series, they are set in the 80s, and that's where Madame Bovary will appear in due course. But if you were going to say to me, write something in a completely different genre, the genre I would go for is fairy tale. I wouldn't go into the future or historical. I would just go for fairy tale, yeah. I love fairy tales, sorry. I mean, I still read them even now.
Well, because I write kids as well, and they're all quite fairy tale related.
Okay, so I'm going to draw everything to a close now. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your questions. And thank you to the panel today. That's it.